So for our next session, this is actually a continuation of a series we started called Career Stories. We started it way back when we were doing our in-person conference. We started it with Mecca, and we recently restarted it with Anthony Mays. And now we're here with Neel. And so we're going to learn a little bit about what he does. We're going to learn by hearing more about his career. So that's the gist of the series. So Neel, tell us a little bit about yourself and your career journey up to this point.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. My name's Neel. I'm a product manager for AI at a company called Webflow. Career up to this point. I spent a few years in consulting where I did like revenue management, so forecasting and price optimization. Then I moved into data science at a local company called MailChimp. Then after a few years, I moved into product management for machine learning and data science features. Then I've been at a few companies since then where I've focused on AI. One was called Mutiny. It was a marketing personalization company. Then Automattic, who's known for WordPress and WooCommerce. And now I'm at Webflow, where I work on AI code generation, as well as the AI assistant and AI credits.
Awesome. So you've navigated roles as a researcher, as a data scientist, and now a staff PM at Webflow. What was the moment that made you realize you wanted to move from building the models to defining the products they power?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this happened, it was while I was at MailChimp. I moved from data science into product. And it was just like a desire to have a larger impact. I don't think that PMs inherently have a larger impact than engineers or data scientists or anything like that. I just liked thinking at a slightly different altitude and thinking outside of what my current role had required. And so I moved into product. It's worth noting that I think every other year of my life, I've wondered if it was the right decision. And I don't think anyone ever knows if it's the right decision. I think that the best PMs are technical and the best engineers and data scientists are very product-minded. And I also think that all of these roles are going to change pretty substantially in the next couple of years. So if you don't like it now, hang around for a little bit.
For PMs entering the AI space without your data science background, what's one technical concept that you feel they need to master to be effective?
You said entering the AI space, right? Yeah, I think you'll hear a lot of people say evals and stuff like that. I think that's important, but it's somewhat intuitive. I think the most important thing for anyone working on AI products right now is to understand how agents work. A few years ago, an AI product was just an endpoint, and you would give it some context, and you would give it some text, and it would return some text. The expectation is now much higher, where you have agents that are making multiple calls, using different models, they have skills or tools or sub-agents and architecture. And I think that's the most important thing to understand. I would say, like any product role, the more deeply you can understand the technical aspect of it, the better. I don't think you can really excel if you just understand at a broad stroke what agents are. Like they're very intuitive. It doesn't require a lot of technical knowledge. It's like just a diagram of things flowing between things. I would say go deep on agents if you can.
So you often advocate for PMs to ship or to do more firsthand prototyping. So in this era of low code and AI assisted coding, how has the definition of minimal viable product changed? And what are some ways that people can make sure that they are staying up to date on the ways that we are prototyping?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that there's been conflicting understandings of what an MVP is. Some people will think it's the least you can ship to a customer. Some people will think it's the least you can experiment with. I've always tended to prefer it being the least you can experiment with. And I think that we're at a phase now where code is cheap. I'm not saying good code is cheap necessarily, but code is cheap. So a week ago, we released a product 2 weeks ago, and then a couple of days later, somebody in the Webflow community posted a critique of it online, and one of my colleagues started an agent doing what we would call deep research, where it comes up with a bunch of things to ask, it does a huge research document, then it specs out a feature improvement it could make. And then after it did that for a little bit, maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes, he kicked off a coding agent that built it and then QA'd it based on a plan that they agreed upon. And he let that run overnight. Not that it takes overnight, but he didn't want to sit there and watch it. The next day, we had something that we could test with users. And I think that is going to start to become the norm. And as code becomes really cheap to build, the code base itself will be sacred, but the things that you build, you should be okay with throwing them away so long as they're valuable to learn something from. And I think that we're soon going to enter a point in time where everyone is building prototypes for potential improvements, either overnight or just while they're in a meeting. And then they come back and they schedule a test with someone who can test it out to let them know, does it work? Does it feel right? Does it feel wrong? And it's this concept of building backwards that I've heard people talk about, where rather than spending a ton of time refining things up front, just get to a finished product and then figure out what's wrong with it. I think that's what's changing right now.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit about how your daily workflow has changed with the introduction of agentic tools. So tell me, what kind of things are you offloading, and what kind of higher level things are you able to do because you've been able to offload some of those tasks?
Yeah, there's a lot of AI noise at any given time. And I know I spoke on a panel that you organized maybe a year or two ago about this. And my advice was to just not pay attention to most of it. I think that now one thing that AI is really good at is summarizing information like that. And so I follow a couple of blogs, and I'll use Notebook LM to summarize things that are being said once or twice a week. And I'll just listen to it so that I don't have to sit there looking at my screen. That's really nice. That just the information comes to me, and anything that isn't there, someone will share with me, and I'll just read it that way. I don't create Jira tickets anymore. I will let Claude do it, and then I review them. I just think it works out better. It's faster because the actual mechanics of creating a ticket is pretty annoying. But reading a ticket that's based on a spec is pretty easy. I will let Claude populate a spec based on a bunch of free-form notes that I take, and then I review that. So a lot of it is just starting with something, letting Claude kind of format it, and then reviewing that, whether that's the spec or the tickets, because we have a format for our spec, we have a format for our tickets. It enables me to just speak or take notes, freeform, or record a conversation and use that to start the information. What else do I do? I'd say those are the big ones. And as for what it enables, I also don't take notes in meetings. I just let a thing do it, and then I will ask that thing what was said. And if there's something that I really thought that I didn't want to say at the time, maybe I'll write it down, or maybe I'll just write it down after the meeting. It just allows me to focus on the person I'm interviewing or the person I'm talking to, rather than split my focus between two things. I don't know. What has it enabled me to do? I don't have to keep up with as many Slack channels, with as many social media chatter. I can just focus on the people I'm talking to and solve problems. I don't know.
I love it. I love it. So we're seeing this shift from chatbots to agents that are actually doing the work. What is the biggest UX challenge in building a product that people can actually trust to take actions on their behalf?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is actually adjusting the way people work. I think their expectation is that they can just tell this thing to do a thing and it will succeed. And the UX has been pretty light around these products thus far. A lot of them are just chatbots, and people have a really lofty expectation. I do think people are starting to ground their expectations slightly, and workflows are being built around how to build something in such a way where you know what parts you're supposed to do and what parts it's supposed to do, or it has the right guardrails in place. Additionally, advancements in AI architecture have made them more reliable at doing the right thing, which has helped, or knowing what they can and can't do. But yeah, I think the biggest UX issue is just helping people understand what is reasonable and what is not. What role do they still need to play? And I think that's the sort of thing that stops people from engaging with it entirely, because they might expect it to do everything, and they try and it fails, and then they decide not to use it at all. There's really a middle ground, and the workflows are not fully baked yet. They're still being determined.
I like that. We're still evolving along with AI, and so these workflows are evolving with us. So we still have a say in how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a staff PM, you're often in rooms where the technical roadmap is being decided. For, say, a mid-level engineer or PM, how do we move from just executing on tickets to actually influencing the AI strategy on our team?
Yeah, I think this advice might sound cliche, but I think the main difference between people who just like execute tickets and people who drive strategy is having a strong opinion. And no one's going to just ask you for what your opinion is. They might if they're trying to really help you out, but we're living in a time where it's easier than ever to carve out additional self time for yourself, like free time. And if you can use that time to start to form an opinion about what your company should be doing, what your product should be doing, then you can sell someone who maybe is a decision maker, like, hey, I noticed that X is happening, or I noticed that we're facing this problem. I think if we do X, we could solve it. We're also now working in a time where you can maybe prototype something that does that very quickly and easily. And so I think it's just about being proactive and having a strong opinion about what should be done. And also being able to communicate that in a way that feels helpful and friendly and not necessarily challenging or confrontational.
So in your free time, you've made a name for yourself as a code-assisted artist. How does your creative practice in generative art influence the way you approach product design and user experience in AI?
Yeah, for context, when I moved from data science into product, I started making art with code, done a few installations. I do various online interactive things. I would actually say that my art has not influenced my work so much, but my work has influenced my art quite a bit. In my free time, I have this headless agent that lives on a server at my house, and I'll communicate with it via Linear, the project management app. And it's got an agentic development workflow where it QAs its own work, and I'm using it to build a platform for creating art, like visual art using WebGL and JavaScript. So it's the opposite. Like I'm building agents and products for my art rather than vice versa.
I love it. As a former artist, I love to hear that. So how can local users or local engineers use your building and public example to recession-proof their careers and stand out in a crowded market?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I talked to a few people earlier in this meetup about this, where no one's really sure what's going to happen. I generally think it's going to be good, but I don't know. Things might get weird for a little bit. Recession-proof, I think right now, I don't know. I personally believe pretty strongly that AI is going to continue to increase its influence in how we build software. I think if you don't believe that, I don't necessarily have advice for you, just because we are like on totally different wavelengths. If you do believe that, though, I think it's just very valuable to understand, like, how are people saying that people are going to work 12 months from now? Realistically, a lot of it might be very agentic engineering focused, where more and more of the work is done by agents, and humans are required to think more about architecture. And that's not so bad. I personally think that's the more fun part of solving a problem, is architecting the solution. But yeah, I don't know. It's something that I spend a lot of my free time doing, as I just mentioned. I do it at work as well. I think it's really valuable to think about what your job is going to look like in a year. And I don't mean that to say, like, there are a lot of companies where we hear about ham-fisted AI mandates where it's just use more AI. And I think that's a thing that is being done by people who don't really understand what's happening. Whereas at companies where they are really thinking about it, they're being very intentional about what they expect from people and also guiding them to help them do that. And I think that I'm not just saying use more AI, but actually think through, okay, if you're a software engineer, what is the agentic engineering workflow that is going to be expected in 12 months? If you're maybe a product designer, what is the agentic designing workflow? Where do those two meet? What role, when code is cheap, what role does everyone play? And what role does their expertise play 1 month, 12 months, 24 months from now? It's hard to say, but if you stay on top of it, I think you'll be fine.
So switching gears a little bit, how can we all find technical peers locally? And how can communities like the community you host, AI, Ship, and Social, help us connect with our peers?
Yeah, so I organize a meetup, AI, Ship, and Social. It's a mixture of social events and talks. It started off about shipping products that incorporate AI, like chatbots. It has evolved to shipping products with the help of AI, agentic engineering. I think that just coming to places like this, and thank you for organizing this, thank you for putting this on for so many years. I think just coming to places like this and saying hi to a few people, following up with them, seeing them at other events, it goes a long way. I think networking is everyone's going to say networking is important, but it can't be understated. I think every job I've ever had is because I've known someone who is associated with that company or that job, almost. And finding peers, I don't know. It's tough because I'm not necessarily one to advocate for letting work invade your personal life, but I like going to events like this. I like practicing this stuff around the clock a little bit, not like all the time. I like talking to people about it. I like reading about it. I'll go on Twitter sometimes. I'll go on LinkedIn and see people talking about it. I don't know. I'm not really answering your question. I think that if you just put yourself out there, some people will be a little too cool, and I don't think you need to worry about them, but other people will be very receptive to the fact that you put yourself out there, and that's how you form those connections.
So what are a few more local meetups or online communities where the real technical conversations are happening right now?
Yeah, so I mentioned I organize a meetup. Would love to have any of you there. I hate to say it, but Twitter is still pretty informative, but it's not really the same type of communication. It's just people talking at each other. It's very unilateral. YouTube, it's great. I watch a lot of, I don't know, I just like watching more than reading. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, but I'm starting to use Notebook LM to generate podcasts, which feels weird. If anyone has any podcast recommendations, please let me know. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I actually think that in a lot of ways, the in-person tech community never fully recovered from the pandemic. It's just not quite what it was in 2019, where you could find a place to go 5 nights a week where there were like 100 people there. It's not quite that anymore, and I think it's very online, but I don't know. I guess that's just the way it is.
I will say that you gave me an idea while you were talking about coming up with a redux of all the podcasts I want to listen to but never get to in Notebook LM. I'm always looking for things to do with Notebook LM, so it's one of my favorite
it's great.
Tools. So what's one book, newsletter, or person that has fundamentally changed your thinking around technology recently?
Yeah, let me pull up what I put in Notebook LM because I forgot their names. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to list a few of these things. One person, how do I do that? Okay, there we go. Adi Osmani. Yeah, ADDYOSMANI. They write very cool blog posts about agentic engineering. Also, what's this person's name? Oh,
He
Simon
also has a few books.
Yeah.
There are a few books. I know he has most recently some AI books, but he was previously writing a lot about web performance.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Simon Willison is another really good Substack / blog. He just writes also about the thing I think most about right now is agentic engineering, both because I want to write software, but I can write software that helps people do it to some extent, although not the autonomous level that people are really thinking about. And so that's what are a lot of the stuff I'm reading. So Simon Willison and Adi Osmani are probably two people that I think write really interesting and insightful stuff. And if you find a few people like that, it outsources a lot of attention that you have to give. You don't have to listen to everything. You just find 3 people are worth listening to.
I love that. And those are good ones. So everyone take notes. So we'd love to open it up for questions if we have time. We're a little bit behind schedule, so I don't know if we have time for too many questions, maybe 2.
I have one question.
Sure.
When you mentioned right now cheap code is the best, and more when you are embracing agentic code, right, in the company. So I'm wondering what is the expectations, because for pilots, it's good to have some small product, but for production, new development, what is the expectations of product manager and the team, the agile communication? Is it still agile implemented in this kind of flows on development, or is reducing the resources, is maybe not needed the entire agile system, Scrum, or kind of
Yeah. So to recap, the question was, we talked about piloting things with AI and standing up prototypes, but what is the expectation for PMs and engineers? And I'm going to interpret this a specific way, but in a slightly larger format, like a company or within an agile project planning, product planning approach. What is the expectation for using AI? I think that a lot of the agentic engineering stuff that people are starting to talk about doesn't necessarily scale that well yet. There are companies who very publicly talk about doing it. So Ramp is one of them. Ramp, like the finance company, obviously Anthropic and OpenAI consider themselves like top percentile of like agentic engineering companies. At Webflow, we're starting to do a lot of it. Obviously, every software engineer is using AI in some way at this point these days, whether it's autocorrect or just like plan mode. PMs are doing some amount of, I've shipped a few PRs, but nothing too crazy. Designers are now prototyping in code instead of Figma a lot at our company in a specific branch that is made for design iteration. And then, as I mentioned, like we ship prototypes very quickly because it helps us just get customer feedback. I can call someone, if I have an idea tomorrow morning, I could call someone, what day is it? Tuesday? I could call someone on Thursday and be like, hey, do you want to see this thing? And like, it's enough to like, get a sense. But as for just like letting it rip and like shipping a production feature, I don't know that we're doing a ton of that yet. I do know that some engineers are doing it on their own time and then spending a decent amount of time reviewing the output, but it's still such that they can have 5 threads going and they still feel it's worth their time. And it's like a more efficient way of working. Our team ships really fast. I think we've doubled the number of PRs we shipped in the past, I don't know, like 3 months or so. That's not to say we're shipping twice as much, but also like breaking things down smaller so that we can understand what's working, what's not working. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that kind of answered the question. Cool, thanks.
Awesome. One here and then Beth.
Real simple, real quick. What's the name of your meetup?
It's called AI Ship and Social, kind of like SIP and social, but ship. I can post one in the comments of the refactor meetup.com thing. Cool.
Beth, did I see a hand over here? I'll get over there too.
So the question for those who didn't hear was about like EPD and the roles bleeding together and are we all just becoming QA? I think the kind of flow that I'm starting to hear people describe is one, imagine where everyone is collectively building the scaffolding or harness around the agent that enables it to build high quality software, which includes your design system, your product strategy, your architecture. And if you do that well, there's a world in which you could start with a 3-sentence prompt. It writes a spec. You review the spec. You think through critically, like you're actually thinking about what it's doing and correcting it. But it's writing based on architecture that you've already described and your practices that you've outlined. When you send it to write code, it does a lot of QA itself. And at that point, you expect it to maybe be 80 to 90% done. Your job is to refine it, throw it away if you don't like it, share it with people. But I still think that there are going to be people who are extremely focused on UX and design and like pushing that forward. People who are extremely focused on architecture, people who are extremely focused on business strategy. But I think the person who's got an eye for all 3 of those is now in a better position than they've ever been. I don't know, that's where my thoughts are.
So are we moving from specializing in any one of those areas to everyone being a generalist?
I don't know. It's like, if you enjoy doing all 3 things, you probably can. If you don't enjoy part of it, you probably don't need to, but I don't know. Like, I do think that someone who likes to grasp all 3 of those things is just going to be more effective and self-contained. But like, some people just don't like doing all those things. I don't think anyone's going to be forced to do all those things.
For sure. Here, and then we're going back that way.
You already asked the question where it's moving for a general programmer like Webflow. What do you say? Using agentic AI, is it positive effect? And if so, do you think that the software engineer at your company, where are they moving in their role? It's just
Yeah, for sure. Just to like recap it, because it's slightly different. It's where is the software engineer going? And I think that it's about, there's this idea that an idea can come from anywhere. Now, like anywhere that an idea can come from, software can come from. And so there's just going to be a tremendous velocity of starter ideas. It's going to take more discipline to understand, like, what do we actually want to do? Otherwise, entire platforms will just become like feature factories. But yeah, I don't know. I think engineers are going to have more time if they want. They can ship more things if they want. They can learn more about design if they want. Become more involved in business strategy. I don't know. Everyone can choose their own adventure to some extent.
In the back, red shirt.
I had a question around greenfield development. Sounds like you're building, I guess it's maybe brownfield, you're building on top of existing things, create big features, but I think it also leads into greenfield as well. How do you deal with handling PII and security concerns? Maybe that isn't a focus because you're just testing things out, but I am curious, with the rapid development, there are these things that always matter, right? And how do you handle some stuff that exists in your trusted to handle that, or do you checks with AI?
Yeah, so the question, and correct me if I heard something wrong, but it sounds like within existing platforms as well as greenfield development, how do we think about PII and security and privacy and things of that nature? The stuff that I code in my free time is just for me, and I don't think about those things at all. At a platform like Webflow, there are many checks that anything will go through before it touches a code base where it can access any information. Some of that is automated, some of it is less automated. Some of it matters before it's in customers' hands. Some of it matters when it's even shipped to a code base. But I think it's all about like isolation, understanding. If someone on my team ships a feature overnight, that's a branch that lives on their computer that they can use or that we can let a customer use if we're in a Zoom with them. It's not really like a high-risk situation until we decide we're actually going forward with anything. But if you're working in an environment where there's easier access to private data, that's probably something you would need to take more seriously. It just isn't necessarily for us.
So I was wondering,
Good, awesome, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much, Neel. This was amazing. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.